Welcome back to Simplifying the State. I'm Adam Watson.
And I'm Nicholas Barron.
Okay, so Nicholas, I got a question for you. If you had to guess, what would you say that Marco Rubio, Nikki Haley, and Kamala Harris all have in common?
They all have A in their name.
Well, that's something, but that's not the thing I was looking for. Another guess?
They're all politicians.
Correct again, but that's not what I was looking for either. I was looking for they are all children of parents who were not citizens of the United States, but because of the policy of birthright citizenship, they are all citizens of the United States. So, Nicholas, can you tell us a little bit about the history, just kind of about birthright citizenship?
Yeah, so specifically in the United States, birthright citizenship, like in law, begins with the 14th Amendment, which was passed alongside other Reconstruction amendments after the Civil War, which whose purpose was to make life for black people in the U.S. better and closer to that of their white counterparts. It was controversial at the time and was only ratified and put into effect because the former Confederate states wanted representation in government, and a deal was made for their representation as long as they, passed the 14th Amendment and the other Reconstruction amendments. An example of like the 14th Amendment is still controversial today. Like we'll get to that, and it's been controversial throughout its life. An example of how it has remained due to that, against that controversy, is Wong Kim Ark, a person whose parents were not U.S. citizens, though he was born in the United States. He left to China and came back and was allowed entry as a citizen, but then he left again and came back again, but that time he wasn't. And there was a court case that was settled by the Supreme Court, which was called United States versus Wong Kim Ark. And the decision that the Supreme Court made was that Wong Kim Ark should be and is a citizen because he was born in the United States.
Right.
So that is a brief history of the birthright citizenship in the United States.
Right. So, have there been any other kind of challenges to birthright citizenship, like majorly, other than well, not majorly, because that's not a word I don't think, but any major challenges to birthright citizenship other than that Supreme Court case?
Oh yeah, there have been a bunch of other court cases. I don't know if specifically Supreme Court, but yes, it has been challenged a lot, and it has persisted through all that.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that kind of brings us to how it connects to today. So in his first day in office, President Trump, he issued an executive order, which he had said he was going to do on the campaign trail numerous times, and he did, and he said it again in an interview with NBC. He said, basically in that executive order, he decided to end birthright citizenship and refuse to recognize children of unauthorized immigrants who were born in the United States as citizens.
Well, isn't that unconstitutional?
It is unconstitutional, and that's kind of why it's causing a big stir right now, and that's probably why 22 states sued over that, and a couple cities and a couple other immigrant law firms and such. And so that is the question that is going to be asked of the court to decide. It's going to be determined whether or not what he did was constitutional, because the main argument that they are making is that the president cannot change the interpretation of the 14th Amendment, and that it is so, well, the argument that they are making is that it is so clearly written into that amendment, into the Constitution, that he cannot just change it unilaterally without Congress or something like that. In fact, New Jersey Attorney General Matt Platkin said, quote, "The president cannot, with a stroke of a pen, write the 14th Amendment out of existence, period," unquote. So it's definitely this, checks and balances. How much power does the executive branch have? I think, though, in terms of larger political sense, just kind of slightly getting off of the topic of birthright citizenship itself, I think this could possibly, if this does end up going to the Supreme Court, which it's pretty likely it does, given the magnitude and importance of this case, I think if it goes to the Supreme Court, I think it's possibly not just about the 14th Amendment. I think it's also possibly about President Trump wanting to see now, how far-reaching his executive powers are going to be for the remainder of his term. So, if the Supreme Court says that yes, he was okay in doing this, then that will probably indicate to him that he has a much more probably wide-ranging power than than other presidents have previously had. But getting on topic, back onto the question of birthright citizenship. So the 22 Democrat-led states, District of Columbia, City of San Francisco, various other immigrant rights organizations sued the Trump administration over it. The order goes on to state not only children of immigrants who entered the country unlawfully, but it also goes on to say that those whose mothers were legally in the United States, but who were legally in the United States temporarily, so like tourists or people who are here on student visas, the children who are then, if there are children who are given birth to by those women who are here legally but temporarily, are then also not given citizenship. So the executive order goes into effect on February 19th, 30 days after it was signed. So it was signed on January 20th, first day in office. One member, I think it was the Attorney General from Washington, said that 150,000 children a year could be denied citizenship as a result of this order. And a federal judge in Seattle set a hearing for Thursday on a request from 4 states who filed a separate lawsuit. They asked for a temporary restraining order to pause the executive order. Basically, that would mean that the executive order would be temporarily paused, so it could not go into effect until the legality of that executive order was decided. So basically meaning they'd have to wait to do it until a court decided whether he was legally allowed to do that or not.
So, do you think the Supreme Court will uphold this executive order or not?
Well, I think here's the thing. There is a large conservative majority on the court, 6 justices. I think it was Gorsuch, 4 of which were appointed by Donald Trump. So there is a possibility. They have often sided with more conservative opinions. But if it does go to the Supreme Court, though, I do think it would be hard to overturn this 100 years of precedent since U.S. versus Wong Kim Ark, and then also, because it's so very clearly written in the 14th Amendment, I also think it would be hard to argue that that is not what it meant and that there is, in fact, a different meaning behind it.
So, do you think there will be any backlash from the Republican Party because Trump did this, or do you think they'll back him until this goes somewhere or doesn't?
I think it's probably unlikely there'd be backlash as a whole. There might be a couple of individual lawmakers who do not like this, but I think as a whole, the Republicans have been very clear that they want action taken on the border, and this is, we can argue it's legality or non-legality, but this is action that the president is taking on the border. So I think that they're probably happy with that he's doing something about it. All right.
That's good.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for listening to Simplifying the State. We'll be back next week where we'll talk about what the deal with the Panama Canal is and why everyone's suddenly talking about it. All right. See you next week.